At least 290 people have died and over 500 have been injured in a series of 8 devastating bomb blasts that ripped through high-end hotels and churches holding Easter services in Sri Lanka on Sunday. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the attacks. 24 suspects have been arrested. The Sri Lankan president, who was holidaying abroad, returned to the country this morning. The president has appointed a 3-member committee for the probe. The nationwide curfew, which was imposed last evening, has now been lifted. However, curbs on social media remain in place to prevent wrong information from spreading in the country of 21 million people. According to the Sri Lankan police, 35 foreigners are among the dead, including American, British, Chinese, Dutch and Portuguese citizens. New Delhi said that 5 Indians were killed in the attacks. The government in Sri Lanka has declared the closure of all state universities indefinitely. All transport services have also been temporarily stopped. The Prime Minister ordered a probe into why intelligence services failed to act on the warning about the blasts.
මෙහෙම අපරාධ කරන්න ඉඩ දෙන්නත් බෑ. එහෙම ඉන්න අය ගැන අපි හොයා බලන්න ඕනේ. මේ පිළිබඳ තිබුණු අඩුපාඩුකම් ගැනත් අපි හොයලා බලමු. දැන්ට තියෙන්නේ සාමය ආරක්ෂා කරගන්න අද.
Across live to a media briefing.
පුද්ගලික සංචාරයක් හෝ රාජධානී සංචාරයකට හෝ රටින් බැහැරව යනවා නම් ඒ සඳහා වැඩ බලන ආරක්ෂක අමාත්‍යවරයෙක් පත් කරලා යන්නේ. අපි දන්නවා රවටි ජයවර්ධන ඇමතුමා ඉන්නවා. එතුමාම වැඩ බලන විදිහට පත් කරලා ගියා නැත්නම් ඔබතුමාලා හරි කවුරු හරි පත් කරලා ගියාද?
අපිට නම් පත් වෙන්න බෑ. ඉන්නේ රාජ්‍ය ආරක්ෂක අමාත්‍යවරයා.
හරි පත් කරලා ගියාද කියන කාරණාව
පත් කරලා ගියා.
පත් කරලා ගියේ.
එතකොට මේ වෙනකොට කලින් දැනුම් දීමක් කරලා තිබ්බාද මේ ආරක්ෂක විසින් මේහා සමාන ප්‍රකාරයක් කෙලින් මේක තියනවා කියලා අවස්ථා කීපයකදී මොනවාද දෙවස් කරා යා මේ සම්බන්ධ කාරණා මේ අවස්ථාවේදී පොලිසිය එක් දේවස්ථානයකට හෝ සංචාරක මධ්‍යස්ථානයකට හෝ කිසිම ආරක්ෂාවක් සපයලා තිබෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකට වර්තමාන තත්ත්වයේ රටේ පොලිස් ප්‍රධානීන් සමග තවමත් ජනතාවට ආරක්ෂාවක් කියලා විශ්වාස කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයෙන් කියන ඒ පොලිස් ප්‍රධානීන් සම්බන්ධයෙන් යම් කිසි නිර්ණයක් ගන්න බැහැ.
නෑ පැහැදිලිවම පොලිස්පතිවරයා මේ වෙනකොට අරනම් ඉල්ලා අස්වෙන්නට ඕනේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි අද කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ තීන්දුව කරේ අපි ඉල්ලා හිටින්න ඕනේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට. මොකද ජනාධිපතිතුමා තමයි.
And now we have Lawrence Sellin, retired U.S. Army Colonel, a veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, joining us live in this broadcast. Thank you so much for being with us here, sir. I want to begin by asking you about the tweets that you've been putting out. You're talking about specific targets who need to be interrogated, who need to be investigated. And this is, again, what the Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, has said. This is a clear failure of intelligence of epic proportions.
Well, it's certainly a devastating attack and tragic attack. I think it was highly coordinated, and it had a level of sophistication, funding, and reach which suggests that there's an international connection with this, similar to the 2008 Mumbai attack and other attacks. As has been stated, 24 people have been arrested. We only know 2 have been identified. Now, what the authorities will be looking for is first looking at the explosive that was used in the attack, and if they can determine the origin of that explosive would tell them something about if there is an international connection. Now, secondly, what are the connections of the people involved? We only know 2 have been identified. One is Mohammed Azam Mohammed, who was allegedly responsible for the suicide bombing at the Cinnamon Grand Hotel. But more interestingly is Zahran Hashim, who has been alleged to be the perpetrator at the Shangri-La Hotel. Now, this individual has a connection with a Sri Lankan organization, an Islamist organization called the National Tawhid Jamaat. Now, interestingly also is that there's another organization actually in Tamil Nadu in India with a similar name, Tamil Nadu Tawhid Jamaat. And there are certain individuals, also Islamists, within that organization who may have international connections. So I think this is an area that needs to be investigated by the Sri Lankan authorities, but also by other international investigators.
Mr. Sellin, I also wanted to ask you to go back to the fact that if there is so much evidence and so much of a pattern identification that could be done, and the fact that there was a warning that had gone out. So in that sense, what do you think went wrong to the fact that when there were such clear warnings and there were clear similarities between this and the Mumbai attacks, how come the Sri Lankan security establishment could not prevent it?
Well, according to what I've read, there was a warning that came out 2 weeks ago, April 11th, by some police authority within Sri Lanka. Now, how much that was distributed or taken notice of by other authorities is unclear. I think the health authorities certainly were warned. I just saw something on that. Now, this is not unique to Sri Lanka. I think if we go back to the American situation of 9/11, there wasn't good communication, for example, between the FBI and the CIA. So I wouldn't necessarily point to Sri Lanka as any particularly unusual case in terms of getting the message out. So it's hard to say where the failure was.
All right. Right, requesting you to stay with us for a moment because we are talking about the U.S. over here, and the United States of America has issued a fresh set of warnings for Sri Lanka. Washington has said that the terror attacks may continue in the island country. The U.S. has revised its travel advisory for Lanka, and the revised advisory is on your screens right now. By placing Sri Lanka under travel advisory level 2, the U.S. has asked its citizens to exercise increased caution while traveling to Sri Lanka. The advisory reads that terrorists may target tourist locations, transport hubs, markets, shopping malls, and local government facilities. Tourists have also been asked to stay away from clubs, restaurants, parks, and places of worship. Mr. Lawrence Sellin, this is a SOP, standard operating procedure, as far as the U.S. is concerned, but do you think this time around there is a greater concern than in the recent times?
Yes, indeed, there is. I think you may already know that such a warning has been put out recently. In fact, 2 warnings about Pakistan, about U.S. Residents or citizens traveling to Pakistan. So a similar warning was given. I'm afraid what we're going to see in the future is many more of these very coordinated, highly sophisticated attacks like we just saw in Sri Lanka, but as I mentioned before, we saw in Mumbai in 2008 and other locations, and which highly suggests that there's an international connections with highly organized terrorist groups that we need to not only investigate but counter very vigorously in the future.
Lawrence Sellin, thank you so much for